Good evening and welcome to another Supreme Commander Forge Alliance Forever replay review. This is going to be the first replay review I live stream. That's very exciting for me, probably not so exciting for you. In any case, we have a nice replay here from Boom, just going to call him Boom. And he's on Twin Rivers, which is an old school map that is now back in the ladder pool after a very long time. I remember playing this in 2012, I think, or 2013. I used to turtle up with T2 Plant Defense and make a Scathis. I guess I changed a little bit since then. But anyways, you gotta know about this map that this is separated by this hill in the center, and you effectively have two lanes that form entrances into the enemy side. So you can assume a diagonal map control split in your ideal game pretty much. And then there's going to be a fight here and a fight here. And typically on this map, there's going to be a large scale fight between land units and the ACU on one side. And the other side is either going to be walled off or it's just going to be ignored. So there's typically not a lot of interaction on one of the sides and a lot of interaction on the other. The island expansions on this map are actually interesting. You can move an engineer here and cliff build an island, a factory on top of this island. This way you can economize on the cost of the transport. Of course, you can also go for a transport expansion, so both works. And the island is not only useful because of the mass extractors on it, but also because of the reclaim. There is, of course, the opportunity to make drops from the island onto the enemy core. It has intel relevance if you manage to get a T2 radar here. That's usually pretty nice. And of course, TML is also going to connect with the core mixes of the enemy base if you make TML on this island. So you can see how the islands are actually very important. I have to say I personally don't have a map-specific build order for 1v1 on Twin Rivers, but these players seem to have one. So you can see, or rather you could see, that Boom has constructed two of those mass extractors with the ACU, and the other two core mass extractors were constructed by engineers. So I think this was two power generators, two mixes, one power generator, and in the meantime the first and the second engineer constructed some mass extractors in the core. So that is certainly unusual, but it seemed to work out quite well for Boom. And Thomas was actually doing something very similar. So I have not introduced Thomas yet. He's playing VF, 1700 rated. And of course, that's going to be a challenge for Boom, who's 1400 rated, playing Aeon. So both players actually are using fine build orders, as far as I can tell. There's a smart expansion. All the important expansions are being addressed on the onset, from the onset, and they're actually also making use of the middle reclaim. So you can see both have engineers heading to the center, and the reclaim is actually going to be integrated into T2 mass extractors. So from a map-specific You Stole Mountains build order, okay, yeah, I remember seeing that one, so okay, that's cool. Like, stealing build orders from better players, of course, why not? And this is certainly fine stuff. Like, as I said, I don't have my own map-specific build order for Twin Rivers, so you're going to have to steal one or make one, but in any case, this looks decent. It's not stalling, and it's actually smart the way it expands and scales. But this replay is not interesting from a map-specific perspective. It is primarily interesting from a strategic perspective. So we are going to talk about strategic decision making here and not so much about efficiency. In fact, both players actually play at a very similar efficiency level, and the outcome of the game is going to be decided by strategic decision making and not by efficiency factors, which is quite unique, but this creates an awesome learning opportunity for anyone watching this. This replay is very short and also very full of learning opportunities. So we have an Aeon versus UEF matchup here, and what can we say about that? Well, in the early stage, Aeon tanks, the Aurora, is going to beat the UEF tank, the Striker, simply because of this range advantage on the Aeon tank. But of course, UEF can use T1 bombers to beat Aurora. So T1 bomber actually very nice here. Which strategic implications does this have? Well, Aeon would probably go second air fighter first on this map to intercept the UEF bomber that's going to come. And wtfboom actually went for an 8 power generator second air. Sorry, I'm a bit late in the schedule, I guess, but you could see that he went for an 8 power generator second air. That's very high power. Second air was not assisted, so I'm inclined to say that that Boom actually overbuilt power a little bit. And in the meantime, Thomas went for, I think, a 7 power generator second air bomber first. And that's why the bomber of Thomas could leave the factory sooner. It killed an engineer here, killed 2 hydro engineers here, still see the wreckages over there, and it also killed an engineer over here. So this was 4 kills on the bomber of Thomas, and Boom's bomber just had a single kill. How did this happen? Well, basically the bomber of Boom was too late because of this extra power generator, but also the very decision to make a second air bomber first is questionable for Aeon on this map, I would argue. And because, as I said, a bomber is going to kill engineers and Aurora equally. Aurora doesn't have the tankiness to withstand bomber fire. So maybe second air bomber first is not the way to go here, Boom. My recommendation is instead of going second air bomber first, just go second air fighter first and make sure you intercept the bomber Thomas is going to send at you. And this way you can win air control at the very start, and there won't be any more bombers hitting your Aurora unless Thomas is going to scale up his air production. Of course, after you cannot change anymore that you went second air bomber first, you would try to dodge with your engineers as much as you can. So for example, these 2 hydro building engineers were so close together. I would have liked to see a dodge here. Also, the death on this engineer was avoidable. UEF bombers actually kinda dodgeable, so please try that next time. But back to the original topic of having an Aeon versus UEF matchup. What happens if we have a fight between Aurora and the Aeon ACU versus Strikers and the UEF ACU? Well, the Aeon ACU with the Aurora is going to win against the UEF ACU with the Strikers, and because of the range advantage on the Aurora. That's just not going to change, right? And I'm talking about unupgraded ACUs here. A JCap, he cannot dodge with no vision or radar. Well, he can actually, because there's always going to be a T1 air scout flying ahead of the bomber, and the scout is going to pass over the engineer, and that indicates which engineer is going to be targeted by the bomber, because you have to spot engineers before sending your bomber. The bomber cannot work without a spotting scout, and the scout reveals what the aim is going to be. Okay, Boom, okay, that's fine. If you didn't have time to dodge but tried, that can happen, I guess. But okay, so again, an army of Aurora and the Aeon ACU, unupgraded, is going to win against the UEF ACU and an army of Strikers, simply because of the range advantage on the Aeon tanks. This means a Boom should try to get his ACU to the enemy side of the map and fight against the enemy ACU alongside with the 2 armies before the enemy ACU is upgraded. And we can see this is not happening right now. So Thomas started his upgrade, and Boom is going to start his upgrade too. You can see that here. So the critical time frame in which the Aeon player has the advantage over the UEF player in such a matchup is before the ACUs are upgraded. Because it doesn't actually matter which upgrade the UEF ACU is going to get. Both T2PD and the gun upgrade is going to be very efficient against Aurora. T2PD can one-hit kill multiple Aurora at once, and the gun upgrade on the UEF ACU can also kill Aurora in a single shot. So let's say you don't manage to attack your opponent before the enemy ACU is upgraded, and you're Aeon playing against UEF. What can you do? Well, you can also just go for your own upgrade. That's happening now. So I would have liked to see an attempt to fight before any ACU is upgraded. But if we can have that, then the correct decision would probably be to get the own upgrade and try to stall the opponent for as long as possible until the Harbs are ready. And of course, Boom is going to go for Harbs. That's a standard Aeon gameplay pretty much. A bit sad to see this factory idle, and actually multiple factories and engineers idle. That's a minor inefficiency in the setup, but that's something you can just address, and that's going to be fine in future games. But again, so either fight while the ACU is not upgraded and try to get an advantage, or prepare to stall the opponent until you have Harbs. This is sort of the strategic background you gotta apply when you play Aeon on a map like this against wtfboom. But of course, going for Harbs requires early T3, and it typically involves T2 skip, so there are not going to be any Obsidian or Blaze tanks on the field. The Harb Rush is going to have game ender potential, but of course there's going to be less stuff with battlefield impact on the map while the factory is upgrading from T2 to T3, right? So you could say that there is going to be a threat of pillar spam, and that's exactly what we are seeing here. So the first 3 pillars are already out. We have 3 factories here upgrading from T1 to T2, and they're all going to make pillars, as you can see. Also some power shields in the mix, which is very nice to see. Pillars, of course, can get overcharged, but with a power shield, that's going to be 1 extra overcharge it takes to kill a pillar. And you can almost say that against a swarm of pillars, an Aeon gun AC is going to be useless. So Thomas seems to try to exploit the time frame before the Harb Rush is active to swarm Boom with a critical amount of pillars to kill him. That seems to be the game plan of Thomas. And what should Boom do about it? Well, of course, pillars are super dangerous, and you can address this problem in multiple ways. So Boom could try to get an advantage in the T1 land or in the T2 air stage. T1 land stage is of course a stage where Aeon is going to have an advantage over UEF, especially before any ACUs are upgraded and because Aurora outranges strikers. And you can also make use of the defender advantage, and this is actually something that has to do with the second air inti first. So let's say Thomas goes second air bomber first, and the bomber flies across the map. Boom goes second air inti first and a scout, and by the time the bomber arrives, both the inti and the scout are going to have spotted the bomber, and the inti starts killing the bomber. The bomber may get a pass over an engineer, the engineer can dodge, and the inti is going to shoot down the bomber, and that's going to mean air control for the initial stage of the game for What the Fuck Boom. And once you have a production lead in interceptors, you can try to go for an airlock. So you can see Thomas has 2 air factories here, making bombers and interceptors. And while Boom had around 5 or 6 interceptors and Thomas just had 2 or 3, Boom can simply patrol these fighters around the air factories, and any airplane that's going to be constructed by these factories is going to be shot down before it's actually operating. And Thomas can respond to this by making anti-air, but that's going to be a cost factor, right? So this is one of those asymmetric deals where Boom can try to get an advantage in the T1 land or T2 air stage. T2 air stage, because of drops, can make RD drops or ACU drops to clear out this expansion, for example, and that's going to be quite nice. And of course, Boom can also try to stall in the T2 land stage. So this would involve keeping one of the factories as a T2 support factory, and this would involve making some point defense, making some walls, and applying conservative ACU play. So what we see here actually is kind of conservative ACU play. There's been an amount of pillars on the map, and Boom is trying to kite, move back over here, and overcharge some pillars, which is of course nice. So Harb Rush really just works if you either get an advantage in the T1 land or T2 air stage, or if you make wall segments, point defense T1, T2, and a slave T2 factory for extra engineers in Asylum to bridge this critical T2 stage. because what we're going to see here now is the following. We have around 15 pillars on the map, that's 3,000 mass, and Thomas is actually massing T1 bombers as well, almost 10 T1 bombers, which is another 1,000 mass. And let's just take a look at the setup of Boom, and we are going to see lots of Aurora, but against this amount of pillars, and considering the spread of the Aurora across the map and the presence of Thomas gun ASU, that's actually not so much anymore. We just got to ask ourselves, what is Boom doing, right? Where's this 4,000 mass that's about to attack Boom? And it's actually inside this factory upgrade. So the factory upgrade costs, like together with the Harb, that is almost going to leave the factory, costs about as much as what Thomas has on the field right now and what's attacking Boom right now. And we had some very interesting situation here. So Boom was on 4,000 HP after the initial pillar engagement, and that's a 10,000 HP difference on the ACUs. And of course, Thomas has this massive army of pillars, this 4,000 mass I mentioned, and that Boom has in his factory, but Thomas has in land units on the field and in air units. So that's a situation where Boom really should not go in and overcharge a pillar, because that's of course suicide. This was really the key moment in the game. So again, 15 pillars, that's 3,000 mass, and 10 T1 bombers, that's 1,000 mass, against effectively nothing. So of course, Boom has not been doing nothing, he has been getting a Harb, but you can see how beautiful this is. So this is like 89% complete, but it has not left the factory yet, and that's essentially dead mass. Simply, like this replay is sort of the definition of a failed T2 skip, you could say. Right? So again, let me summarize the key learnings of this game. The better reaction would have been keep falling back, secure the base with T2 point defense, and instead of Harsh, consider making some sniper bots to force the ACU of Thomas back, because if you make a Harp and the ACU is just going to overcharge it, that's of course going to suck. Thomas is going to be smart enough to keep the pillars around the ACU. But rather than just reacting better, it is even better to prepare better. So next time Boom try to attack with an unupgraded ACU instead of waiting for the upgrade to complete, and just try to exploit your land advantage in the unupgraded T1 land stage. And you can consider securing the side with T1 PD, T2 PD, and wall segments. So could draw a line of walls here, for example, place a PD in the gap and make a T2 fire base behind it. You can also try to get a map control or raid advantage in the T1 land or T2 air stage, upcycle some of the T1 factories in the core, and put them into a support T2 factory that can construct all sorts of units to help bridging this critical T2 stage where UEF is so strong and Aeon is so weak. So of course, this game had a few inefficiencies. For example, there are some overbuilt T1 engineers and that aren't actually reclaiming, they were just forgotten. There's Team D at the back of the base, and that's not necessary because you can just scout if there's a Team L on the islands, and if there is some, you can consider sniping it or making Team D, but you would not just build Team D if you don't know if there is any Team L. Team L from the center of the map cannot hit the back, so the range is just not going to be enough. And of course, having these idle factories, or like factories that weren't needed anymore but not reclaimed and reintegrated into the economy, these are all some small inefficiencies that add up. But to be honest, there were also some inefficiencies on Thomas' side. So in the end, inefficiencies were not what decided the game. It was just the failed, unprepared T2 skip. So I really hope that the tips I gave you are going to help you executing a better T2 skip. T2 skip does not involve having absolutely nothing on the map in the T2 stage. There needs to be some insurance, either in the form of an advantage in the T1 stage, or in the form of defenses in the T2 stage. So I really hope this helped. And if you have any questions, let me know now, or after this video is uploaded in the comment section under the video. Thank you very much.